There was no denying how good Nier Automata was when it released in 2017. The combat was slick, the world was fascinating, and the story and characters had me interested from the get-go. Few games achieve what Nier does in creating a truly human experience in a world where androids and machines run rampant. And now the entire experience has been made available for Switch owners to enjoy too. But does the core experience hold up on the weaker portable? Well, that's what I'm here to answer in GameXplain's review of Nier Automata: The End of YoRHa on the Nintendo Switch. So let's cut to the chase. This is one of the best ports I've seen on the Nintendo Switch. The game targets 1080p in docked and 720p in handheld at 30fps. The visuals are sharp and avoids the softer look of a lot of Switch ports like The Witcher 3. Of course, there are compromises made. Textures are a fair bit worse than other versions of the game, and the foliage is nowhere near as detailed, but the game still looks great. The world of Nier is beautiful and it's still apparent on the Switch version. The biggest issue is the level of detail, with distant buildings resembling smudges until you get close. It's definitely noticeable, but never really detracted from my experience. For a game like Nier, performance is everything, and this port targets 30fps, unlike the 60 of the PS4 version. And I know what you're thinking, playing a spectacle fighter at 30fps must be painful, but it surprisingly isn't. I mean, it's a genre known for fast inputs, for parries and dodges, and fluidity being of the utmost importance. And yet, I could still perfectly dodge enemies and pull off some flashy combos even on the Switch. I revisited the PS4 version for this review, and I was worried going from 60fps to 30 would make the Switch one feel nearly unplayable. But it was a compromise I was willing to make because I could play the game in handheld mode in bed. It does drop the odd frame here or there in the open areas, but again, it barely registered for me. I was honestly expecting more severe drops during the fights against large groups of enemies or boss fights, but they rarely happened. The bottom line is, the game still feels great to play on the Switch, even at a reduced but steady frame rate. There are a few oddities that I can only assume are tied to the frame rate. When playing the PlayStation 4 version, jumping felt more responsive. There's a slight delay on jumping on the Switch version, and on top of that, the slowdown when pulling off a perfect dodge is longer on this port, and the only explanation I can think of is if these are tied to the frame rate. If you haven't played the PS4 version recently, then you probably won't even notice these issues, but they're worth noting. I do still recommend this port to newcomers and veterans of the game though. Virtuos added in gyro controls, but I turned it off after about 10 minutes. With these, you wiggle the right Joy-Con to melee attack while in the ship, and dodge while on the ground. It was funny at first because it reminded me of the Wii, but I quickly turned it off. But what about the game itself? To put it simply, I found Nier Automata to be one of the best games of the PS4 Xbox One generation. In it, you play as 2B, a YoRHa android created by humans to take back Earth. The setup is simple, but everything after is fairly convoluted, but in a good way. 2B and 9S's relationship is one that has stuck with me even years after playing it for the first time. The plot is great and the world building is fascinating. There is always some piece of information around the corner that further fleshes out the world, filling me with intrigue of what happened before and what I'm about to do. But it's in the characters' reactions to what is going on that the game excels. It's a philosophical tale showing each character's struggles with humanity of lack thereof, and I'm going to stop here before I spoil something, as it's a story that's best experienced for yourself. Not only is the story top tier, the combat is too. You have a mixture of light and heavy attacks to string combos together, and a pod that shoots enemies. Now I don't think it's very challenging, but oh lord is it satisfying. The animations are beautiful, with 2B flipping, spinning and slicing our way through hordes of machines. And don't get me started on the perfect dodge animation. Still, after 5 years, I love it. On top of that, there is a whole host of weapons, each with their own slick movesets, and you can mix and match two weapons at any time and switch between two weapon sets, meaning you can pull off some seriously cool moves. Just like other spectacle fighters though, I do fall into the same few combos for my whole playthrough, but it never gets stale. And this is thanks to the game's constantly switching perspective. Sometimes the camera is behind the shoulder, others it pans out to a 2D perspective or even top down. There are also bullet hell style vehicle sections which are nowhere near as fleshed out as the main combat, but still feel great to control. Switching the perspective frequently sounds messy, but they execute on it brilliantly and I never got bored as a result. The most inconsistent part of Nier Automata, however, are the side quests. Some are great and flesh out the world, peering into the lives of machines and having some great character interactions, but others feel like fetch quests. The layout of them can be clunky sometimes as well, having to move from place A to B, then back to A, then to C. And there's just a lot of walking in some of them. Now luckily they are optional though. The music puts a giant ornamental bow on top of this already fantastic package. I can't understate how good the soundtrack to this game is, and I've listened to it numerous times. It masterfully creates the atmosphere that this game is so famous for. The opening track is somber and ominous, and then I started exploring the city ruins and this track plays. And I can't describe just how much I love it. every subsequent track is as good as the last. I don't even know what genre to put it in, but it perfectly matches the tone of the game. On the PS4, Xbox and PC, Nier Automata was a must-play game, and I'm so happy to say that Nier Automata the End of YoRHa edition on Switch joins them. Sure, there are compromises such as the lower frame rate, but it's a mostly smooth 30 FPS at the very least. The game remains perfectly playable by all means, and I'm happy that more people will be able to experience this fantastic game. Frame rate is very important to me, and I love Nier Automata, and while it's still perfectly playable on the Switch, the drop from 60 to 30 FPS frame rate is enough for me to give it a light a lot. There we have a review for Nier Automata the End of YoRHa edition for the Nintendo Switch. If you're new to the game, are you interested in playing it? And if you've already played it, is the portability enough for you to want to buy it again? Let us know in the comments down below. Check out the videos on the right and you may as well subscribe while you're at it. I really appreciate your time and I'll see you all on the next video.